The story of a tiny bean called coffee started in Arabia and has become a part of the daily life of the world to the borders of Antarctica. It is thought that the word coffee originated from the Arabic word kawa, and the word kawa originated from the Kaffa region where coffee was grown. Coffee spread to the world from Africa and is made of the ground seeds of the coffee tree. It is assumed that the coffee was first used in Ethiopia, where the coffee trees grow naturally. According to another legend, a shepherd who lived in Arabia in the 9th century first became aware of the value of coffee beans. The shepherd, who lived in Kaffa, present-day Ethiopia, noticed that the animals in his herd were more active after eating the red fruits of a kind of bush, and tried the fruits himself. He then experienced the feeling and pleasure given by the coffee and informed others about it, and thereby introduced mankind to coffee. Coffee first appeared between the years of 500 and 800 AD. During this period, the coffee beans were taken to Yemen from Ethiopia. The most credible story about how coffee beans were taken to Yemen from Ethiopia is that one of the great masters of the Sufi sect, Omer Esh Shadili, took the beans from Ethiopia to Yemen himself. When he arrived in Yemen, he resided in a seaport called Mocha and became known as the Dervish of Mocha. Yes, Mocha coffee that you drink in Starbucks and Gloria Jeans or in fancy French cafes and perhaps presume is French or Italian does in fact come from Yemen. Its name also originates here. The Mocha port was very important during the Ottoman Empire, whereas Europe and the Western world would not meet coffee for another 1,000 years. Coffee, so very popular in the Western world today, spread to the world through Islam. Coffee became a religious drink because it reduced the need for sleeping and was consumed in considerable amounts amongst the dervishes during the daytime. That is why the coffee was taken to anywhere that Islam spread. Coffee was taken to Europe for the first time in 1615 by the travellers who went east and was considered a medicine at the start. It then became more and more popular because of its stimulant and sleep-reducing effects. The taste of coffee was appreciated by the Europeans, and it reached Marseille in 1644 and then almost instantly to Lyon. This habit spread towards the inner parts of France fast and was introduced to the high society of Paris by the ambassador of the Ottomans, the Emperor Suleiman Agha. While the coffee drinking habit became more and more widespread in France, it was introduced in Great Britain in 1650 and was welcomed with admiration. During the beginning of the second half of the 17th century, a series of coffee houses, whose fame continues to this day, were established and took a place in the daily life of the city. While the coffee houses in Paris were the centres of intellectual activities, they were also serving another group, the progressing bourgeoisie in London. The best examples of this are the coffee houses opened by Edward Lloyd in Tower Street in London in 1687. The Italians learnt the coffee culture from travellers who learnt well the traditions of the Ottomans. especially through the efforts of Luigi Ferdinando Marsigli. Marsigli shared his observations on the coffee culture with his fellow citizens through his book Bevanda Asiatica Brindata. The siege of Vienna by the Ottoman Empire introduced coffee to Eastern Europe. The Ottoman army left a lot of supplies at the gates of Vienna when they failed to conquer the city and returned home. The coffee beans present amongst those goods were found by the Polish immigrant Franz Kolchicki, who had also played an important role during the course of the siege. Kolchicki was also the first person to ever open a coffee house in Vienna. After this, coffee became very popular in Europe and countless coffee houses opened. Now, the coffee culture has started to influence the Western culture too. J.S. Bach composed his famous coffee cantata because he was so fond of coffee. The coffee culture both created its history and set its seal on social history. The French novelist Pierre Loti, who is famous for his affection of the Turks in Istanbul, was a regular in the coffee houses of Istanbul. A coffee house located in his favourite neighbourhood, where he frequently visited, is now named after him. Amongst the devotees of coffee during the 17th century and onwards are Madame de Pompadour, Victor Hugo, Dumas, Molière, André Gide and Honoré de Balzac. Coffee first entered the Ottoman palaces during the 16th century. It was brought to the Sultan of the time, Suleiman the Magnificent, by the governor of Yemen, Özdemir Pasha, and became one of the indispensable beverages of the palace. Turkish coffee was served in the majestic halls of the Ottoman palaces to the Sultan by a team of 40 coffee-making experts. The people who were commissioned to prepare coffee for the Sultan were Kahveci Basha, the head of the coffee makers. The head coffee makers were commissioned to make coffee for the Sultan and other important statesmen, and were chosen from the people who were loyal and knew how to keep secrets. These coffee makers used to wear white gloves while making the coffee. They would bring the coffee to the gates of the harem, knock on the door, and pass the coffee to the treasurer on duty. Turkish coffee had taken its place in the social life of Turkish society and had become an indispensable part of Turkish hospitality. There is a Turkish saying, "A cup of coffee creates respect for 40 years for the one who offers it," and this saying reflects how important coffee is in Turkish culture. Coffee and coffee houses have played an important role in the process of the East influencing the West. The English traveller Charles Macfarlane, who witnessed the most critical years of the Reformation epoch of the Ottomans, describes the changing culture texture of urban life with the following comment: "The Turks cannot live without coffee." The above comment from an Orientalist refers to the image of traditional Turkish people who began to put the pleasures of coffee and tobacco above all in the whirlpool of the culture of the changing lifestyles. This is also the portrait of an Oriental person who is the master of the space he has created. If we need to establish a date for the birth of the coffee house in the East, we can probably put it at 1511. The first coffee house was opened next to a mosque in a public place where coffee was drunk in Mecca. The first coffee houses were opened in Istanbul in 1555 with the approval of the Sultan. The Turkish historian Pejevi, who lived in the 16th century, wrote, "In 1554 a merchant called Hakem from Aleppo and an effendi called Shems from Damascus came to Istanbul. Both of them opened their coffee houses in Tahtakale district and started to sell coffee to their customers." After this, first in Istanbul and then in the rest of the empire, coffee houses opened one after another and became widespread even in the villages. The lifestyle of the Ottoman people played an important role in this rapid spread. Because the Ottomans went to the mosque to pray, to their businesses for daily income, and home for family life, the coffee houses provided for the first time an opportunity for a lifestyle other than basic needs, and was not designed by the social morals of the Ottoman people. During the Ottoman era, different kinds of coffee shops were established for different kinds of customers. There were neighbourhood coffee houses for the community, tradespeople's coffee houses for tradesmen, janissary coffee houses for the Ottoman army members, and music coffee houses where music was performed. The imaret coffee houses were established adjacent to the places of worship, and public storytelling coffee houses were where actors told and acted stories for the public. The list is endless. During the Ottoman period, coffee and coffee houses were prohibited many times by different sultans. The first prohibition was decreed by Sultan Murat III. However, neither coffee addiction nor the opening of illegal coffee houses could be stopped, and therefore the prohibition was abandoned. During the reign of Sultan Mehmet III, coffee houses were transformed into centres of opposition. Students of Muslim theological schools, senior bureaucrats, tradesmen experiencing financial crises, and janissaries complaining about the government, together made the coffee houses centres for political opposition. The coffee house became a dangerous establishment for the Ottomans because state conversations, according to the strictures of Ottoman bureaucracy, were practiced here. And during these conversations, criticisms of the administration were expressed. The Ottoman urban life gained a political context and started to socialise. With a criticism directed at the government through the coffee house, another prohibition was declared. At the beginning of the 17th century, during the reign of Sultan Ahmet I, coffee, together with tobacco, were prohibited again. However, this prohibition was as ineffective as the previous ones. The next Sultan, Sultan Murat V, prohibited the consuming of coffee, together with tobacco and opium, and decreed the death penalty for the act. However, during the reign of Sultan Mehmet IV, a fatwa was issued, indicating that roasted coffee cannot be classified as forbidden by religion, and the prohibition was abolished. In 1826, the coffee houses were once again prohibited, while the Guild of Janissary was abolished, but drinking coffee remained legal. In 1830, the prohibition of coffee houses was removed. After this date, instead of closure and prohibition, control mechanisms were developed to keep a tight rein on the coffee houses. the beginning, the coffee houses were functioning as academic and non-academic meeting points. The architecture of the coffee houses were designed accordingly to serve these purposes. Knowledge about the architecture of the coffee houses of the period does not survive to this day because the majority were burnt, demolished or destroyed. However, from the pictures of artists from those times, it is possible to see a true reflection of the architecture of the era. In present-day Istanbul, coffee houses, similar to the first established, are still in service. Madrasa of the Ali Pasha of Çorlu, situated in Beyazıt in Istanbul, is one of them. Madrasa of the Ali Pasha of Çorlu is no different from the old coffee houses of Istanbul, where local people and tourists pop in to drink Turkish coffee and smoke nargile. A classical coffee house used to have a square-shaped entrance known as the central square. 3 or 4 sides of this space were covered with seating 1 metre wide. Sometimes it included a special space for taking off the shoes, called a shoe cabinet. The main part was elevated from 20 to 30 centimetres high, and this part was surrounded by seating another 30 centimetres high. In the centre there was usually some kind of water fountain. In the most dominant parts of the coffee house there was a hearth. On both sides of the hearth there were 3 or 4 road shelves for coffee cups and other equipment. During the 19th century, the appearance, plans, internal designs and decoration of the coffee houses changes considerably. The style contained no fountains in the centre. Instead, a platform for musicians was usually built. After the administrative reforms of 1839, internal decoration also changed. First, coffee tables appeared. Then round tables with one leg took their place in the coffee houses. Instead of the divans surrounding the coffee houses, where the customers would sit cross-legged, chairs or stools started to appear. They were even introduced for use in front of the coffee house. Turkish coffee is the kind of coffee leaving the longest lasting taste in the mouth. The coffee type made of high quality coffee beans of the Arabica species is not grown in Turkey, but is called Turkish coffee because of the method by which it is made. In order to maintain that perfect taste, the coffee beans should be consumed immediately after being roasted, or should be packed in a fashion that allows them to keep their aroma. When made and served, the granules of the coffee remain in the bottom of the cup, and these are called telve. This is an indication of how healthy the coffee is. The sediment remaining in the bottom of the cup is also the reason why the tradition of fortune-telling unique to Turkish coffee originated. A type of coffee pot called cezve is needed to make Turkish coffee, and coffee cups called fincan are needed to drink it. Cezve, the pot in which Turkish coffee is made, is most desirable when made of copper. Fincan is a kind of cup in which Turkish coffee is served. Fincan, with their variety of decorative designs and colour, are a crucial part of the culture of Turkish coffee. Fincan and cezve are a prerequisite to the ceremony of Turkish coffee. The secret of Turkish coffee is in its making. To make Turkish coffee, you first need a cezve. But if you want to make a good Turkish coffee, you must choose a copper cezve. Making Turkish coffee requires care and attention. If you hurry, you may not reach the desired consistency. In order to make Turkish coffee, 1 fincan of water per person is put into the cezve. 2 teaspoons of coffee and 2 teaspoons of sugar per fincan are added to the water. The amount of sugar can be adjusted according to personal tastes. Turkish coffee can be made using different amounts of sugar. Plain coffee, coffee with a little sugar, coffee with normal quantities of sugar, and then sweet coffee are all available. Water, coffee and sugar are mixed thoroughly on a low heat. It is cooked until the surface of the coffee becomes foamy. Then the foam is distributed equally between the cups. This part is extremely important because the most important feature of a good cup of Turkish coffee is its foam. If the consistency of the Turkish coffee is not right, there would be no foam. After distributing the foam, the remaining coffee is boiled a bit more and then the cups are filled. It is a custom to serve water alongside Turkish coffee as it prepares the palate for the taste of the coffee. Currently, coffee is the second biggest product after petroleum. The Tahtakale district played an important role in the spread of coffee throughout the Ottoman Empire and to Europe. The coffee beans brought from Yemen were sent to Europe by merchants. During the Ottoman era, Tahtakale was a centre where coffee beans were roasted and traded. In Tarmish Street in Tahtakale, the offices of the merchants trading in coffee were located. Currently, 2 firms remain from the Ottoman period, and they are still in service in this street. One of them, Kuru Kahveci Mehmet Efendi, was established in 1871, and the other, Kuru Kahveci Nuri Toplar, was established in 1890. The corner, situated crosswise opposite from Boluk Pazarı, Hasarcılar Gate of the Egyptian Bazaar, is the place of Tarmish Street, and therefore the location of the famous coffee merchants for more than a century. The Boluk Pazarı, Hasarcılar Gate, which is one of the famous 6 gates of the Egyptian Bazaar, is also called Tarmish Gate amongst the locals.
Sugar inside? Yes, sugar.
In Arabic, Tarmish means a place where coffee beans are roasted, and Tarmish Street is the name given to the place and the street, T-junctioning this area. Here, coffee firms settled and survived to this day, with little change over the last 100 years. When you enter Tarmish Street, you can enjoy the delicious smell of coffee, and may even feel a slight dizziness. The mystical heritage of the Ottomans reminds you that you have entered a very special street. In fact, these parts of Istanbul are famous for their aromas. After leaving the authentic atmosphere of the Egyptian bazaar, full of spice smells, you are greeted by those of coffee at the entrance of Tarmish Street. The most important qualities of Turkish coffee come from its roasting and grinding. If it is over-roasted, it can be bitter and cannot be drunk. If it is insufficiently roasted, it can remain raw and won't develop its distinctive flavour. Now, let's visit the shop of Kuru Kahveci Nuri Toplar and learn the key points together.
odun daha lezzetli olduğu için biz bu sistemi bozmuyoruz. Şimdi mazotla kavrulan kahve ile odunla kavrulan bir olmuyor. Odunla kavrulan daha lezzetli bir tat çıkarıyor. Mazot ise o dumanın şeyinden lezzet vermiyor.
The coffee beans are put into the roasting stove, which is heated by a wood fire and has been used in this establishment since 1890. Roasting the coffee properly is a skill transferred from master to apprentice. If the coffee beans are taken from the stove before they are roasted properly, the taste wouldn't be desired. If they are over-roasted, then they will be burnt and the taste becomes bitter. The masters control the coffee. The second step in making Turkish coffee is grinding the coffee beans. The roasted coffee beans are put in the coffee mill and ground, and therefore prepared for sale.
Firmamız 120 senedir kahve üzerine çalışmaktadır. Bir asırı geride bırakmış firmamız. Kahve bize Brezilya'dan geliyor. Çiğ çekirdek olarak en iyi kaliteyi Türkiye'ye getirtiyoruz. Odun ateşinden kavurduktan sonra en ince çekim olarak değirmenlerimizde öğütüyoruz. Ondan sonra müşterilerimize sunuyoruz. Az kaldı odunla kavuran kuru kahveciler. Yalnız biz zaten odun ateşiyle kavurmamızın sebebi eskiyi öldürmemek, o lezzeti kaybetmemek. O şekilde ayakta duruyoruz. İnşallah bunu daha da genişletiriz.
The last chain in the ceremony of Turkish coffee is the fortune telling. Turkish coffee fortune telling is an important habit for Turkish people. Commenting on the shapes formed in the sediment of coffee granules and telling fortunes is a very old form of this art. This type of fortune telling used to be performed in the houses of the Turks and in other Muslim countries by the psychic fortune tellers. However, currently there are Turkish fortune tellers using the grinds in the majority of coffee houses around Istanbul, including those in Taksim. The obsession of the Turkish people for Turkish coffee fortune telling has turned into a whole new sector.
Buyurun efendim, ne arzu ederdiniz?
Az şeker bir Türk kahvesi alabilir miyim?
Tabii hemen getirelim sana.
Teşekkür ederim.
Afiyet olsun.
For Turkish coffee fortune telling, after the coffee is drunk, the cup is placed upside down on its saucer. The person who has drunk the coffee and wants their fortune told makes a secret wish while turning the cup upside down. The fortune teller waits until the cup gets cold and then takes the cup and starts to tell the fortune. The fortune teller makes comments on the patterns formed by the coffee granules remaining in the cup. The first step of fortune telling is done by reading the inside of the coffee cup. The second step is by interpreting the patterns formed on the saucer. Despite the fact that these predictions of the future are sinful in Islam, this form of fortune telling is very popular in Muslim countries.
Benim fala başlamam çok ilginç ve komik oldu. Ya ben çocukluğumdan beri böyle evde fal, işte annem bakarken onunla birlikte fal bakardım ama profesyonel olarak fal bakmaya başlamam işlettiğim bir kafede falcımızın işten ayrılmasıyla birlikte tamamıyla tesadüfen oldu. O şekilde fal bakmaya başladım ve sonrasında aslında bu işi yapabildiğimi kendimi keşfettim. Türkiye'de çok fazla kadın ve erkeklerin fala meraklı olduğunu görüyorum. Genelde insanlar sıkıntılar yaşadıklarında fal baktırıyorlar ama evet yani fala meraklı olan çok fazla insan var. Orta sınıf yaşayan insanlar bankacılar, öğretmenler ya da doktorlar daha çok işleri için geliyor. Orta sınıfın üstünde yaşayan kadınlar daha çok aşk hayatları için geliyor. Orta sınıfın üstünde yaşayan erkekler iş hayatları için geliyor. Orta sınıfı yaşayan erkekler aşk hayatları için geliyor. Varoşlarda yaşayan insanlar, onlar çok fazla dertli oldukları için hayatlarındaki her şey için geliyorlar. Onlar büyük yıkıntıları çözebilmek adına geliyorlar. Onlardan çok zaten hayatlarını fala göre yönlendirmeye çalışan insanlar. Onlar biraz daha sıkıntı yaratıyor bizde. Yani diyorum ya, sosyal statüye göre aslında geliş amaçları da değişiyor. 18 yaşla ben 65 yaş arasındaki insanlara fal baktım. Ama şöyle söyleyeyim, 45 yaş üstü olan insanlar, 45 yaşla 65 yaş arasındaki insanlar kendileri için değil de daha çok çocukları için fal baktırıyor. Şöyle bir genel inanış var. Hani kadınlar daha çok fazla fal baktırır diye. Ama ben ortalama diyelim ki günde 40 kişiyle yüz yüze geliyorsam bunun 25'i kadınsa diğer geri kalanı erkek oluyor.
The soul needs a friend. The coffee is just an excuse. Is a common saying, as one desires a cup of coffee together with a friend or over a conversation. The story of the little coffee bean has transformed to the extraordinary pleasure of Turkish coffee, the drinking of which is now popular amongst millions. Coffee is now associated with concepts such as mystery, love, peace, respect and nostalgia, and it has become an indispensable part of the culture and lives of many.